This is a general rule for hitting abilities that are long line skill shots. So for me, this is things like Vex Ultimate, Ezreal Ultimate, and Yone Ultimate. But I'm assuming it applies to things like Lux Ultimate as well, which are instant. But it's a more severe issue on things that have a travel time. So imagine that these target dummies are all one champion, and it's just showing their trajectory from point A to point B. So they could be moving from right to left or left to right, but they're just moving in this same straight line direction. And compared to them, we're positioned directly in the other opposite directions. So if you draw a line from where we're positioned to their trajectory, it would look kind of like this. We call this perpendicular, and all that means is that if you look at our line and their line, this is kind of drawing four sections which are perfect squares or quadrants. Okay, so now imagine it takes them 5 seconds to go from the start point to the end point. The thing about us being positioned in this kind of perpendicular way is that when we throw our ultimate, we have to predict at which time in their path our ultimate actually has a chance of landing. If it takes them 5 seconds to go from here to there, then we're only going to have a small time window of maybe like 1 second or so where our ultimate actually has any chance of landing. And so when we throw our ultimate, we really have to predict this timing, where our ultimate even has a chance of landing. And if you'll notice, the farther back that you stand, so if we go like kind of like max range with our ultimate, the farther back that we stand, the harder that our prediction has to be. We have to predict that our travel time of our ultimate will line up perfectly with the travel time of them moving in this direction. So it becomes really difficult, and it's actually like the most difficult situation possible for you to land a skill shot like this is if you're, standing directly perpendicular and max range, and they're moving in this like straight line, which is like the opposite two directions. Now compare that to this, where we're standing kind of like in the same straight line direction that they're moving in. Again, these target dummies are just like one guy, and it's representing like the direction that they're walking. So right here, you'll notice that we no longer have to predict at which time during these 5 seconds of their walk time that our ultimate has a chance of landing. Our ultimate has a chance of landing in the entire duration that they're walking. So in this situation, it's a lot easier to land our ultimate because we no longer have to predict these impossible lineup timings. And the other thing is that any small adjustment that you make when you're standing in the same kind of direction that they're going in, any of these small adjustments will only slightly change whether your skill shot hits or misses. And equally, it's more difficult for this person to dodge your skill shot from here. Now if we go back to this situation, you'll notice that any small adjustment that we make has like giant implications, because it's like there's also a time component to this. And also, like, if you imagine someone's moving in this direction, it's easier for this person, for example, if I aim it like this, it's easier for them to just click here, which is kind of like backwards to where they're moving, to dodge my spell, than it is if I'm throwing it like this. And all of a sudden, this guy has to dodge like this, even though they were moving in this direction. So it's both a lot easier for you to line this up and more difficult for them to dodge if you're kind of like in the same direction than it is compared to this, where it's a lot easier for them to dodge and it's a lot more difficult for you to predict the timing of this. So the whole point of this is that you want to line yourself up where you are as close as possible to this straight line compared to the direction that they're moving in. So you're not always going to have this perfect straight line, but if you could stay as close as possible to that straight line, the easier it will be for you to hit this long line skill shot. So don't throw like your Vex ultimate or Ezreal ultimate or whatever like this, where you're perpendicular to them, but instead really try and stay as close as possible to this kind of like straight line. And that will make it a lot easier for you to land these ultimates. And like I said at the start, this is a general rule. It's not that these like perpendicular ones are impossible to land, but they are just a million times more difficult for yourself to hit, and they're a million times easier for the enemy to dodge. But for example, for Yone ultimate, which is instant, and you'll notice that Yone ultimate is a lot shorter range than like max Vex ultimate. So for Yone ultimate, you can still land some sick ults if they're like directly perpendicular like this. But you will just notice that if you Yone ultimate as close as possible to being in a straight line compared to their movement, you will land a lot more ultimates than if you always throw them like this, where you have the tip of your ultimate basically where the enemy is going to be, and they're moving in this like perpendicular direction. This will be a lot more difficult to land. But yeah, for all these long line skill shots, just try and position yourself as close as possible to a straight line compared to their direction of movement. And you'll find it a lot easier to land these skill shots. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Omero2582, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.